You have to. Yes.
Yes. Good evening. Welcome to the Audit Committee meeting for this evening. And I welcome all the committee members and officers, observers. Thank you for coming, and let's start our agenda. My name is Sarfraz Ahmed Khan, and I'm a Councillor of Healing. I'm Vice Chair of the Audit Committee, and today I'm chairing this committee on behalf of my councillor colleague, Avon Johnson, who could not make it due to some reasons. So can we introduce to ourselves, please?
Yeah, I'm Councillor Gareth Sutil of Southfield Ward, and the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrat Group, and portfolio is Finance and Performance.
Hello, I'm Emily Hill, Strategic Director of Resources.
Hi, I'm Emma Horner. I am the Assistant Director of Technical Finance.
Hi, I'm Mike Pinder. I'm the Assistant Director of Audit and Investigations.
Hi, I'm Councillor Faduma Mohammed, Southall West, and I'm a new member of the councillors joined in last year. Thank you.
Does that leave me? Can you hear me? Hello, I'm Bridget Uku, Investment Manager, London Borough of Ealing.
All right, okay. Let's move to our agenda item number 1. Is there any apologies and absence or substitutions we received up to now?
The only absence I was aware of was Councillor Johnson, which you were already aware of.
But Ben's lesson is not here.
I
haven't.
didn't
We
know.
haven't. Okay, that's fine. Agenda item number 2 is urgent matters, needs to be considered. And is there any urgent matters needs to be considered?
No.
Yes, no,
No.
okay. Agenda item number 3 is there any declaration of interest which needs to be declared? No. Agenda item number 4 is a matter to be considered in private, and I will read the sentence just for the information of everybody. Item number 11 contains information that is exempt from disclosure by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Should discussion of the item be necessary and on agreement on the committee under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press would be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of some information. Agenda item number 5 is the minutes. Have we read and approved the last meetings, or which was taken on 28th of February 2023? The minutes are approved.
Sign that. Very much.
Yeah. Today, the 6th item on our agenda is Treasury update. And that is quarter number 3, note number 4, as I'm told by the clerk. And this will be presented by Bridget Uku, please.
Hello, yes, good evening. This is the Treasury Management update for quarter 3 for the Council. I haven't really got any update to give. I think all the facts are written in the report. Risk management continues to lie at the heart of our investment philosophy. So we're there to manage the capital invested to make sure we get that and get a return that's commensurate with our risk appetite. We operated totally within the confines of the investment guidelines. We are continuing to see higher investment returns. As you all know, interest rates are rising. We are very fortunate to have taken quite substantial amounts of borrowing that we needed for our capital program when interest rates had dipped to very low levels. So at the moment, we're getting the benefit of carry until we need to use those resources. Unless you've got any other questions, I've got nothing further to update on this report.
Any question? Good.
I have a couple of questions. Would you like me to say them one by one or all together?
One by one would be better, please.
Okay, no problem. So the first question is, and it's page 65 of the report, indicates that a significant increase in commitment to Broadway living. However, if you go on page 49, it says that that the council casts significant doubt on the council's ability to continue to invest. Could you please explain that for me, please?
Okay, page 65. Let me have a look. So you're saying we have a significant investment in Broadway living?
Yeah, so, okay, like, the report indicates a significant increase in the commitment to Broadway living.
Yes.
On page 49, it basically says you're casting doubt on the ability to invest. Yeah, it just seems a bit contradictory.
Okay, hang on, let me go to 49. Because Broadway Living is an internally owned company. So that investment is basically a policy investment. So page 49 might be talking about something else, which might be about investments and being risk averse. So which paragraph on page 49?
Is it 49 of the pack or or?
Yes, I'm looking at the pack. So I'm just looking for which paragraph you're referring to. Because investments with other companies that are not sort of owned is completely different from the Broadway Living investment, which is really a policy investment to further the council's policy aims. Mm. So that's not an outsourced investment with a third-party counterparty. So I'm not sure, I can't actually find the paragraph you're referring to, but Broadway Living is an investment that has been approved quite a long time ago by Cabinet, and we are basically running along with that. There were supposed to be 3 phases which haven't quite progressed.
Okay. Page 50. So I got the page 49.
It's a liability benchmark is on 49.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Even me making a mistake. Yeah. Yeah. So the second one is in the report, it says the council hopes that the cost of money will start to fall back. But where's the sufficient evidence that where's the evidence that it'll fall back significantly?
So is that, what paragraph are you talking about now, please? If you can just point me down. That what will fall back?
Gary, can we please give a page number so she can directly?
Yeah. So this one is 49 again.
Are we referring to liability benchmark?
Okay. Okay, so are you talking about which paragraph? I can't hear you if you're answering me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm not answering.
Okay,
Reading through the page.
right. If I just say the timing of our borrowing and when we actually spend is not exact. So we borrow when interest rates are at the right interest rates to borrow. So we can sometimes be over borrowed or under borrowed, depending on what's happening with the markets and how our capital program is doing.
Gary, is that the answer you're looking for?
So on the council borrowing, we're slightly over borrowed because when interest rates dipped to very, very low position, we took out some borrowing at that rate, at that point. So we've been slightly over borrowed in view of the borrowing required for Broadway living, to fund the Broadway living.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Through you, Chair, thank you. Yes, so on page 50, there is a reference here. It says, currently the interest rates are not favourable for new borrowing and interest rates are expected to fall in the coming years. That's right. So I think what you're asking us is what evidence do we have that we expect interest rates to fall? So that is on page 50. I found that and I'm afraid I haven't been able to find the other one. So yes, we expect interest rates to fall. They are, well, what we are basing that, I mean, it is true that nobody can quite predict interest rates or inflation, and had we been able to do so, I probably would be sitting in a Manhattan apartment somewhere rather than at this table today. So it's absolutely true that we have to take the best advice that we can in understanding interest rates and interest rates falling. I think right now the Bank of England would say that they expect interest rates to fall. They're absolutely using they're using interest rates at the moment to manage inflation. We finally saw it to start to come down. And there is an expectation that in that sort of next year or so, we should see inflation drop significantly. Having said that, nobody predicted the rate of inflation that we did eventually see. So I think the Bank of England absolutely expects interest rates to come down. We also have external advisors. So we have Treasury advisors called Link. And they give us medium-term and long-term views of what will happen with interest rates. It's true that we don't know, but we take the best advice, and I think that the country expects to see interest rates go down in that medium term. So what we're saying here is that essentially, if we needed to borrow, we don't want to borrow at the top of the market. If we borrow today, we'll be borrowing at a higher rate than potentially if we borrow in 3 years when we expect that to come down. So yes, we are making an assumption that interest rates will fall back to normal. Well, what is normal? They will fall back to similar rates to previously, although they were very and historically low previously. And what I would say, it's based on sort of wider economic analysis and our link advisors.
And in the meantime, we can interborrow, like the HRA can borrow from the general fund as well. So timing, we can work around the timing of when we borrow for each side.
Yes, Kerry, any more questions? That's fine. Any more questions? Okay, can we move to the next item? Is number 7 and public sector audit appointment, which will be explained by Emma Horner, please.
Okay, so this report is to inform the committee of the appointment of Mazars for the council's external auditors for the period of 5 years for both Ealing Pension Fund and the London Borough of Ealing main audit. This will be commencing from the financial year 2023. This is just for noting the appointments, but I will just highlight to you that under the risk section 8, although there is no immediate risk to the council, we are conscious that early planning will be required to achieve the successful transition between our current auditors with open accounts and the new auditors for the financial year 23-24. Okay.
Any questions? Yes, please.
Prior appointing the new auditors, has it been a competitive selection? Has the council undergone looking at other auditors and gone through a process? If you could explain that, thank you.
Yes, of course. So the council opted into what is the PSAA, so the Public Sector Audit Association. This is we opt into this where the contracts are tendered for the external auditors within the PSAA. We are then appointed our auditors via them. So we opt into the process for economies of scale. It does make the fees relatively cheaper than going out with the administration of going out to the market ourselves. And we are then appointed the auditors via that process. And I don't know what percentage of the councils, but most councils will opt into this process, given it stops that contract process within the council.
Right. Okay. Just before we move on, can we ask Treasury Management Update Report was agreed? Thank you.
And that's,
And
this one.
number 7, appointment of the auditors. Can I, any question, Faduma or Ungari?
Is it no?
Is that noted? Can I ask question as well on this topic, please? The auditors of new auditors, have they taken the appointment formally?
So the auditors are appointed by PSAA. So the new auditors, Mazars, have been allocated, as Councillor Mohammed just sort of asked the question, that they allocate nationally all of into individual firms, which authorities will have which auditors. So Mazars have now been appointed to us. Unlike a sort of private sector engagement, we don't have an individual engagement.
Just a specific question, please. Yeah. Is the Mazar has accepted the appointment of the new auditors?
Yes. Yes.
And the Deloitte has resigned?
Well, they haven't resigned because they still need to complete the audits that are still outstanding. So they will need
if they have not resigned, how the new auditors have accepted the appointment, new appointments?
So they will accept the appointment for the financial year 23-24. So the one that we've just started.
I understand that, but the question is, if the old auditors has not resigned yet, and the new auditors, how come they have accepted the new appointment?
So the sort of audit resignation and acceptance procedures are different under the PSAA regime to the usual companies regime. So they're appointed statutorily to audit. So they, whilst they can they can refuse an audit being allocated because of independence requirements, because you must be independent as an audit. Actually, they're accepting a bulk contract essentially with PSAA for all of the audits for that year. So they're not taking necessarily on an individual, they're not accepting the contract on an individual authority basis. They're accepting a contract of a number of audits for that year.
And are they aware of, the two years audit is still outstanding?
They are, and they have many of their own audits with 2 years audits outstanding as well.
And my concern is this, how can they start the audit when the previous year's audit are not finalized and audited and opening balances are not audited?
That's right.
So from where will they start from?
They can't and they won't. They will only audit, because you're right, they must have the opening balances from the previous year
Yes.
audited, and they will rely on the previous external audit to do that. They will do that. What that does lead to, as you're indicating, is a backlog across the country of 2-3 years audits. That is a significant problem essentially to the local authority audit market at the moment.
This is another, my concern is, if this is the way we are conducting, then we don't be falling like Croydon Council.
So I think what you're saying is correct. I think external audit is an important element of assurance for audit committees and residents as to the veracity of the financial statements and the financial conduct of an organisation. So it does, I think, mean that a lot of local authorities across the country don't have that external assurance in a timely manner that they should have. And that is a significant concern to the sector. I've got some statistics here, I think, that of the last year's audit, 21-22 audit, only 2 London boroughs have had an audit opinion.
This, Emily, this is, with due respect, this is not the concern I have. Who is falling behind? What was the reason our council was not able to get the audit in time?
Because our auditors do not have the resources to enable them to complete the
Do we
work.
have in written from them this letter? They don't have the resources?
We don't have that. What we actually need to do, because it's an issue across the country, and know that you're concerned of Ealing, but because it's across the country, the DLUC, which is the department, is concerned about this matter. It has asked authorities and auditors to provide a written position statement to the audit committees on their plans to get to that, to clear the backlog. So at the next meeting, we're trying to get to work with Deloitte to ensure that we have a written position statement to the next audit committee from Deloitte on that. But absolutely, as Emma said, they're not here today. They are not available, at least they've said, until early July, but that would be when they come back and finish our 2021 accounts before they then start the 21-22. And of course, we've just prepared our 22-23
accounts, and those opening figures are unaudited. So
yeah,
that's really practically we're saying the new auditors will be charging us the fee, but doing nothing.
So yes, well, they will be required to do it at the completion of those audits.
But why we are wasting the resources then, if we know this is the position we are in at the moment? We don't have the available data, what they require to start the audit. And yet we have appointed the new auditors. And as far as I know, the previous auditors have pulled from this industry.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Yes.
So if they have pulled, that's my second question is, if they have pulled from this industry, how we are expecting from them to audit the previous 2 years outstanding audit? And what are the assurance? Are we pursuing them in writing? What sort of assurance we have? They will be conducting the audit. They have charged us fee, I understand. And what sort of assurance we have from them? They will be conducting the audit and finalizing the audit and giving us the audit report. And if that report, for example, is unqualified one of the year, then what will be the course of action with us?
So in terms of the concern around the backlog, that is something I have raised and discussed with PSAA because they are the contracting authority. So they have the contract with Deloitte to hold them to delivering what they are required to deliver under the contract. We had suggested to them whether there was a possibility that Mazars could pick up a year earlier.
So does that mean the Mazar will be doing their work and who will be paying them?
So we only pay for audits.
For 22, 23, 24 to Mazar, but why they will be doing the previous year's audit work?
23. Well, we would absolutely need to, well, so
We need to make
so
it clear. That's what I'm coming at.
that we
need
would
to
only
get-
pay for the audit fees that we absolutely for the opinions that we get. Absolutely.
Yes. So
No, that's
they,
quite right.
they won't be doing the previous year's audit.
No, audit, actually, when we've discussed whether Mazars would pick them up early, Mazars has said they do not have the resource to pick them up early.
It mean,
either.
does that mean we will be late again for the third year's audit as well?
So I have significant concerns that that will be the case. And whilst you don't mind about the rest of the sector, that will be the issue across the
Again,
sector.
it is the point of, it's not the sector, it is my concern is 1.5 billion pound of this organization don't have audited
External.
accounts for the last 2 years. The third years I don't see will be audited in time.
Me neither. And it is
Yes.
equally a significant concern to me. The issue is that any individual authority and even DLUC, the department, do not have the leverage to sort out the external audit market to enable that work to be done across the sector.
If we are going on that route, so when they were late from the first year in 2022, 2021 year audit, did we raise this concern why they don't have the resources? And if they don't have the resources, why they are charging us?
So this has been raised by the sector. There was a review called the Redmond Review of the sector for the, I'm trying to think when this Redmond Review was, but I think it was a good 3 years ago, 21. So there has been national review as to the problem with that. So we must pay our audit fees. We don't have the contract with the external auditor. The contract is with PSAA.
Yes, I understand that body is our main point of concern, point of contact. But my concern is this organization is not audited for the last 2 years,
Right.
and will be late for this third year as well. And without audit, we don't have the accuracy, there is no transparency, we can confirm.
Sorry, just to let you know, obviously over the past year, Audit have presented the ISA 260 report, so draft versions or updated us via a report at the audit committee. These have set out any concerns they've got within their audits. And if you go back to those, you will see that there's no material issues within those reports as they've presented us throughout the year. I appreciate we haven't had the final one.
I was present in the last committee, Emma, and in there, the category clearly made it very clear the asset register of this organization is not complete, and that can be a negative remarks from them. I'm using very carefully the word, and Emily understand that where I'm coming from, but this is a very big point of concern when this big organization does not have even the assets register completed. And at the same point, when I'm pointing out all these things, I would like to bring this very few points today in this committee. By profession, I'm a registered auditor. I understand how these things works. I don't see the real value of this meeting, this audit committee meetings, because we don't have the interim audit report from you. I requested, And I don't know what you're waiting for, why they have not been given to me. Number one. And number two, we need to make reforms in this audit committee to see every quarter what is happening as a continuous audit, what sort of weaknesses are, what sort of we have picked out, and what sort of we have not, or what sort of we are unable because of the human resources. And if these things have been put forward in the past, we would not have been in this position today. With 3 years audit, unaudited accounts of this organization is not really acceptable. And yes.
So, I will be very clear, the 3 years of deferred audits of this council are not due to the quality of this council's accounts, nor the ability of our staff to respond. There is a significant issue with the audit sector, which has meant that's the backlog. This backlog has not by any means been because of the quality of this council's accounts. I am very clear on that.
I accept that, Emily, but my concern is the same. This organization, I do not want this organization is following the Croydon councils, what they have done. And where we stand today, 2 years unaudited accounts, 3rd year, I don't see they will be doing any productive work on our audit while they will be charging us. And the weakness of the internal control systems, which I highlighted, I had a meeting. I think those reports should be put forward to us in the committee, in the next committee, if possible.
So the internal audit reports come in a summary form, highlighting the key issues to the audit committee. Inclusion of sort of detailed reports hasn't been the case here.
We do need the detailed report, but these reports are like you and me can understand, with due respect to my members. Here, these are very complicated issues in this audit reports, and we should be explained to a normal member. They should understand and make comments. End of the day, this committee is the signing authority of the audit report. And if we are making mistakes, then tomorrow the audit committee will be responsible as well.
So the format of the audit report has been the same for the last 6 years. We regularly ask members for feedback on the format of those reports. And we've had good feedback. We met with you, we've discussed that, we're discussing it with the chair, and we have an intention. I think the other thing is to say, if you want copies of the reports, you're entitled to ask for those. Sorry,
it's not only me.
If you let me answer, we will provide you with the reports. And we just wanted to agree that with the chair. We explained that to you the other day, that we've had a change of chair, and we just wanted to agree through protocol that they were happy with our suggestion. We haven't been able to do that because the chair is on leave, and we will do that ahead of the next committee. So what I will say is these reports are 10-20 pages long, and there's several of them. What we're trying to do is highlight the issues to you so that you can then say, actually, I'd like to see the full report of that, which you're fully entitled to do, rather than have to share hundreds and thousands of pages that you'd have to work through and try and focus on the same issues that we're drawing your attention to. We can agree to disagree on that. Like I say, you're entitled to ask for those reports, and we've said that we will provide to you just through protocol. We are trying to agree it with the chair of the committee.
Can we say that report, the question I asked in our private meeting, that will be laid on the next committee meeting on this?
Once we've agreed the protocol with the chair.
Are you making notes? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, let's move to the next agenda item, please. Yes, please. Yes, please.
Hi, just a follow-up what's been raised by the chair. I just want to understand, obviously there's a backlog on the external audits. which is nationwide, as you explained. What is the risk to the council?
The risk is that you do not have external assurance as to the material accuracy of the financial statements. So the risk essentially would be that the financial statements or officers are not reporting the true financial position of the council. So it may have made, for example, estimates that were considered to be unreasonable, and so it's reporting an underspend, whereas potentially it could have been an overspend. Most of those things, I think, whilst really important, particularly over sort of a number of years, will work their way through, because at the end of the day, all of the transactions that need to be made have a beginning and end in cash. So you either receive income in cash, or you make payments in cash. So in the sort of significant and material impacts of sort of 2-3 years ago would usually work them way through, that you would understand that a local authority runs out of cash and is having problems. So the risk is that you don't have that external assurance, and that external assurance might mean that where an authority had not recorded a true or fair position, either because of concerns and a wish to hide the position and be not transparent, or because of error, it wouldn't have to be a sort of fraudulent, that we wouldn't know that. I think there are a number of mitigations in terms of financial monitoring, quarterly monitoring throughout the year, so you can sort of understand where we are in terms of financial position, whether we're overspending or underspending. As I say, there's always the control of cash, which gives me sort of whatever would happen, I understand what's happening with cash. So I think that's mainly the risk. It is that sort of someone's marked my homework, if you see what I mean. I would hope that I would get at least 80% of my homework correct. And that's why when you look at accounts and the auditor's review of accounts, it will only ever give you an opinion that it is materially correct, because you said it yourself, Councillor Khan, we spend £1.5 billion. So actually we can't make everything accurate to the last penny. And the auditors couldn't check to the last penny, because if they checked to the last penny, they would be literally ticking everything that we do off. So the auditors can only ever give you assurance to a material level in any case as well, but they do give you that reassurance and that my homework has been checked. But yeah, I think in an instance where you have got a council in significant financial difficulty, then you do need that reassurance even more, because you need to know, if you're at the edge of your bank account balance and your savings balance, that those other things are correct. At this point in time, Ealing is in a relatively stable financial position. It's worked really well to build its balances over the year. And so we're not in a position where we need to try to look at the edges of our transactions.
Please.
And this is just a follow-up on this. It was mentioned, and I think it might be as a control measure that you do sort of quarterly, that there's a account build-up of the backlog. They do quarterly, or I don't know how frequent. So, you know, the end of the year has not been done. So there is an interim measure at the moment to make sure that it's mitigated the risk. Am I correct to understand that?
So they have done some work. So they come in when they have resources available, and at that point they do it. So they are looking at our work. Whilst they haven't provided an opinion, they have been reporting on an interim basis. If there had been any really significant issues that they felt sort of were material to the council or material to the financial position and the sustainability of the council, they would be required to report to us separately. I know Councillor Khan mentioned the asset register. In doing so, I think what they were talking about was a single asset register. The council obviously is clear on the assets that it owns and has different arrangements to understand how to control those assets and to value those assets. So it's talking about a part of a process for which actually the council has a broader set of controls and opinions to controls and processes to establish. So in my mind, whilst that they raised an issue and we always look to improve our processes, it doesn't give me sort of significant concern that our accounts are materially misstated because of that issue.
This is just a suggestion, Chair. Subject to Chair approval with the protocols, are we able to see this ad hoc when they come in, the auditors, and they're doing checks? Are we able to see those reports?
So I think they come here. So the auditor's interim audit findings reports and audit updates, they come to this committee. So as a matter of course, you would expect to see them as and when they report them. Unfortunately, they aren't auditing that frequently. And so we requested an update today. They weren't able to provide resources to provide an update today. And so we didn't have one, but as soon as we get one, absolutely, any reports from external audit come directly here for you to see.
Okay. Concluding this agenda item number 7, I would say only in the absence of final audit report, our emphasis should be on internal audit as much as possible, so we can refine our system, review our internal control systems to make sure any material mistakes are not being carried forward and which can create problem for our organization. That the appointment of the audit is noted. Yep. The next item agenda is the draft accounts 2023, and I would request again to Emma Horner to please highlight on that.
Okay, so the purpose is to present the draft 22-23 statement of accounts for note and comment by the audit committee. I can draw your attention to section 3, where this explains that the 31st of May deadline was brought forward from the previous 31st of July deadline. And whilst the government consulted on this date, other sectors' feedback responded that the extended deadline should continue, and not least because of the significant challenges being faced to timely audits of the accounts. And just to draw your attention as well to the CITFA statement that was released on the 31st of May, statutory financial reporting deadline for local government advised of significant challenge being faced by chief finance officers and their finance teams, and risks to the achievement of the deadline of the 31st of May, including the impact of the well-being of staff. The statement reiterated the importance of balancing the timeliness, and the quality of unaudited financial accounts. So it's getting that balance between timeliness of publishing on time and quality of those unaudited financial statements being produced. In balancing the two, the Strategic Director of Resources, the Chief Finance Officer, approved the draft statement of accounts on the 5th of June 2023, 5 days after the statutory deadline, and therefore from the publication date, that's when the period of exercise of public rights began. The 30 days.
I've got a couple. So I have checked the page number on this properly, and I've circled it. So on page 112, if you have a look at the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph down, said they had the savings target of about 16.3 million, and you were short by about 6.7 million, but there's no explanation of how you're going to meet this in this year's target. Now you'll catch up from last year's target.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Pursuit-Hill. The majority of those savings that weren't achieved this year were in relation to adult social care and the work that they were doing to prevent older people, older residents from entering into residential care, which isn't always the best outcome for people, and also which is at the same time more expensive for the council. Because during 22-23 we are still seeing the impact of COVID, particularly in the cohort of older people entering care homes during that COVID period. The work that we were doing to change that, to enable older people to stay in their homes rather than go into was delayed, because essentially we had to deal with the impact of COVID. So actually now we're starting to say that the sort of the operations now after COVID, I know COVID still exists, but as we're returning to a business as usual, we can return to that programme, which was being very successful before COVID, but we had to be on pause, and we were talking about a different cohort of people during COVID.
Thank you, Emily. May I carry on? Yeah, next question. So page 120, if you have a look at the bottom chart, and I think I've mentioned this to you before, Emily, about the overspend on children's and schools and adults and public health, which it is quite significant. If it's therefore that significant, surely then the budget is wrong.
So I think in relation to this one, I think we would say we've already talked about inflation, actually, haven't we, today? So at the time at which this budget was set, it would have been during the period sort of November, December, finally approved in February this year. So sorry, the year before. At that time, the level of inflation was unexpected. At that time, we didn't expect the level of inflation we actually ended up seeing within that financial year. So yes, you are correct in that the budget did not foresee the significant double figures inflation that we did see during that financial year. I would be very surprised if any budget did. And again, if so, then they probably would have been sitting in their Manhattan apartment instead of me sitting here today. So yes, I think that's right. Budgets are always estimates. They must always be estimates at a point in time. So to an extent, yes, they would have been incorrect, because we did not predict the level of inflation. Having said that, there's also, we didn't necessarily predict the levels of demand increase, because cost of living and as cost of living impacts our residents, we see higher levels of demand as well in our social care services, homelessness, and other things as well. So to an extent, I agree with you, just because we could not have foreseen at the beginning of the year those circumstances that suddenly came into place.
And I've just got one last question, and well, it's not really a question, but more for fact finding and like my education, you could say, is that if you have to look on page 166, where it says market loans, so market loans of 61 million has been included in long-term borrowing, but have a call date in the next 12 months. That's not really, well, that doesn't appear to me long-term, so that's just more of an explanation, really, please. It's in the middle.
Thank you. So LOBOs are market loans, which are lender option, borrowers option. So they are long-term loans. So we've got a long-dated agreement on them. However, the O bit, the option bit, means that the lender can choose to change the interest rate. However, if they change the interest rate, we also have the option to repay the loan, to say we don't want to pay that rate because it's gone higher. And at that point, we would then borrow from the PWLB, for example. So these were taken out before my time, but as I understand it, they were relatively low rates in the event that they chose to exercise their option within the next 12 months. And that was higher than a rate that we would be paying on the PWLB. At that point, we would say, in that case, thank you very much, we will repay and we will borrow from the PWLB at a lower date. So whilst it is a long-term loan with a long-term expiry date, actually, because of these call-in and option periods, there are periods in which you can break it, essentially.
Thank you, Chair. The head of audit's opinion builds upon the work completed during the year. Conscious we've got a couple of new members. So during the year, we present all the reports as they come through each quarter, which you'll see in the subsequent section against the internal audit plan. Based upon the work completed, I then form an opinion. So I've looked at the reports and the conclusions over the year, and there is a limited assurance opinion. This is similar to that of last year. There are a number of factors that inform that. Also to say that we do look at the key financial systems and isolate those, and they've had reasonable assurance, which is based upon 3 of the 4 financial reports during the year getting a reasonable assurance. It is the 3rd year running that I've issued a limited assurance report. Probably different drivers in each year. The first year was down to numbers, which is similarly this time. Last year was a significant issues around health and safety. Looking at this year, there's a thematic issues around monitoring and governance. And this report has been discussed with SLT, who there's been a significant amount of change during the year, and I think they've taken a lot more interest in the work of internal audit, those concerns, and they're very keen to try and ensure that some of those things are addressed. So they're looking at kind of those thematic issues, and not just how to address the ones that we've got, but looking across the board at how to do that. Also, there was issues, I think, with follow-ups. We had a number of high-level recommendations outstanding, and in January it was up to about 24. That's now down to 7 as per the report. And that's been working with SLT, who've been keen to try and ensure that some of those issues that they probably inherited as interim managers, they've been working to address and make sure their teams do that. But I think it kind of reflects the position during the year, and we've kind of seen improvements more recently. That kind of sets out how that opinion came about, and I'm keen to emphasise that there were a number of interims and a number of changes in strategic management, and that does tend to bring about a little bit of a delay in implementation. And I think it's important to reflect that most recently those are starting to get addressed as we've reported to you. In the report as well, we've updated some of our key policies, which I've included in full to recognise that we've got new members here. The updates are very minor, generally kind of changes to reflect the new structure of the organisation and changes in job titles. Also, we've got the external quality assessment. Quite simply, that's the audit of me. It's done in an independent way, where an external assessor who is qualified in the business comes and looks at us. And we got the grand title of generally conformed, which is very audit speak, but it's essentially the best possible position. There were some recommendations, and I provided the full report, including feedback on surveys, and I think some very good feedback. We're in the business of not pleasing everybody all of the time. So I think the kind of reflection there is very, very good. The recommendations we've taken very seriously. Again, I didn't agree with all of them, but I've given those to you so that you're aware of where we haven't agreed. It's not that I don't fundamentally agree with what they're saying. It's just that I think we are doing what we think is the best way to address that. There are a couple of areas where we weren't meeting best practice, and we've now implemented that essentially by including additional statements in the account. So we actually explicitly state that we are independent, and our independent hadn't been challenged during the year, whereas previously we were independent, we just didn't state it. Section 7 goes on to the performance against the plan. I'm pleased to report that all the reports are finalised. We're actually in this committee probably a month before, due to the statutory deadlines for publishing of the accounts, but we've still managed to publish. So that's probably the earliest we've actually finalised all of our work in any year. So I'm really pleased to do that. In terms of the Q4 position, we finalised 15 reports, 7 of those which received limited assurance and 1 nil. Summaries have been provided within the report. Management have agreed all of the issues and the management and agreed management actions to address these. With all audit reports, we do bring back performance of those against any high recommendations. If they don't meet the deadline, we tell you about that and any revised actions and whether they're partially implemented or not implemented, as you'll see in section 8. I think reflecting on the previous meeting where we had, I think it was about 20 recommendations outstanding, we've made significant progress. We're not there yet. And I think probably the only area of concern was around the temporary staff, which has now been escalated to the strategic director. Again, transitional, we've got a new director coming in, and I think the best way is that they own that, and therefore they discussed having a September date to allow them time to get in and ensure that those things are addressed. Some of the actions in there, like the policy, has now been implemented, and it's a case now of implementing and monitoring against that policy. We had hoped to do some of the monitoring before to address the risk, but it kind of what they're saying, I think, makes sense. What I would say is let's see in September, and if they haven't addressed those, I think then that's one of those where you may wish to speak to the manager to see why it hasn't been done yet. Final section is relation to counter fraud. Apologies for some reason the numbering goes a little bit haywire here, but hopefully the content makes sense. We've achieved actual and notional savings of 526k in the year. Good progress. We had a little bit of a slower start due to sickness, and I think in Q1, Q2 we weren't hitting all of the targets. There are still a couple of targets where we've not quite achieved it, but in terms of output and sanctions we have, which is the important thing to me, and I think good level of actual and notional savings, and that the pace on that significantly caught up in the year. We've also set out some of the proactive work that we do to try and prevent fraud as an indication of those type of projects, and the National Fraud Initiative, which is a national driven thing where we all put in our data into the pot and get matched, and we get some referrals from that. Some are great, some aren't so great, and we investigate those and take those through. Any questions?
In the previous meeting, the external auditor mentioned we are not following their guidelines. They have mentioned several times, and our accounts department is not following. Have we started following their guidelines to rectify the mistakes, whatever they found, and they want us to follow their guidelines?
Sorry, I'm not sure what you mean by guidelines.
In the last meeting, the external auditors, when he was giving us the guidelines, giving the speech, in that he was saying, he did mention, they have mentioned in their report in the previous reports some guidelines for the accounts department, but they are not being acted upon. Those,
I think they made some recommendations
yeah,
to the
those recommendations, we
accounting
have,
team.
are we following those recommendations or we are not able yet?
So I think in terms of the ones that we've made, there has been actions and updates which we sent out to the committee in an interim measure to demonstrate that things are progressing. I think in terms of the external audit ones, we're not responsible for following those up, but we do liaise with Emma's team to try and make sure that these things are addressed. I think there's progress, but we're not there on all of them yet.
Yes, Emily, can I ask any specific reason why we are not following and we are not up to the position where we can follow maximum their recommendations? Can I ask one question? Are we fully staffed as far as accounting department is concerned?
We have someone currently on maternity leave, but we have brought in additional resource to cover that maternity leave. So we don't have our permanent complement of staff, but we've brought in as a resource to cover that maternity leave. So yes, we are fully resourced with sufficient resources. This isn't an issue of resourcing, it is an issue of timing. You're right to be delayed about worried about the delays in audit, as I am, because what that means is because we do not have a final position on 2021, we cannot, because we don't know what the recommendations are, implement them going forward. So there are significant concerns, as you've already raised, around the issue and the state of the audit market. And what that means for us to be able to constantly improve our processes. Where they make recommendations, we absolutely do take those seriously and put them in place. Although in 2021, of course, by the time they've raised the issues, we've already prepared our 21-22 financial statements because we haven't had the time. So we now need to then implement those as we go forward after that. So we will see potentially, because they're not reporting them to us in a timely manner, those recommendations being repeated in the financial statements because we haven't been able to address them because we've already prepared the financial statements for the next financial year.
Okay, that's good. Now, one more question is, those recommendations which were made by the external auditors, when we review our internal audit process, internal audit control, do we consider those recommendations to incorporate into the internal audit so the same mistake does not occur again?
Quite simply, yes, we do.
You do. Okay, thank you. Okay, in agenda item number 9 on page number 291, I assume you have noted number 1.1 and 1.2. Yes, okay. Coming to agenda item number 10, draft annual governance statement, which I will again request Mike Pinder to please highlight on that.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the annual governance statement. It's slightly different from other audit docs, and it's very much done with the organisation. We write out to all of the strategic directors and ask them to kind of raise any concerns or issues. We work with other governance leads within the council to describe the systems and processes that we have and the structure of committees, and basically try and put it in a nutshell or 10 pages to describe how we make decisions and try and provide good governance across the council. We then take this to SLT and get their feedback and ultimately pull together the document. Included within that, which usually draws most attention, is the areas of significant governance. For the benefit of the new committee members, the housing things are legacy issues which were raised last year, there's been significant work within the year to address those matters. It's just not been signed off by the regulator yet. We're also doing another audit now as we speak to look at the progress and confirm that kind of those actions are in place and kind of fully assess. And hopefully that will be there, but it's kind of a legacy issue that still needs to be raised until we've got that assurance. The other two areas raised are kind of national pressures that we as an organisation are trying to manage to the best of our ability. We've introduced a new structure and format this year. It's based upon good practice as we assessed it from a number of councils, and we developed this format with our shared service partner Hounslow. So we've had lots of people tell me how I can improve it. Essentially, what happens next? This comes to you to draft. We also go to the leader to get any feedback. Also, then it's audited, and then it will come back to the committee for an approval process before going to the chief executive and the leader to sign off. So we're having those kind of consultative stages and getting that feedback, and we'll make you aware of any changes between this draft and the final draft, which comes to you once the external auditors have signed it off, which will hopefully be sometime soon.
No. Sorry, Emily, any?
No,
Yeah.
it wasn't on this matter. I just wondered if after you finished with this item, I might be able to clarify a couple of the issues previously. I wasn't at the last meeting, but I've just reviewed the minutes that you've asked questions on other matters that I might be able to come back on, but please go ahead.
All right, okay. So agenda item number 10, I assume is noted? Yeah, okay. Going forward, agenda number 9 on our today's agenda. Risk management update Q4 2022-23. And I will read this paragraph again, which is very important. This item is to be presented by Mike Pinder, Assistant Director. This contains information that is exempt from disclosure by virtue of paragraph 3 of the part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Should discussion on the item be necessary and on the agreement of the committee under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press would be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information.
Thank you, Chair. Introduced on the basis of the open paper, essentially a couple of key changes to highlight to members. We've removed the risk around the Percival House project because essentially that project has stopped. A new project is being looked at. We can't assess the risk of that yet until the project's been agreed to see whether there'll be a new risk that comes with that. We've also added a new risk around the future housing supply information, which and minor changes have been made to a risk just to keep them up to date and ensure they reflected. Any questions?
Okay, then we here close our meeting, and the next meeting will be
Just minutes, that
Yeah.
agreed.
yes, this minutes has been agreed.
This item.
This item,
Yeah.
this particular item, yeah. Agreed. And the next meeting is on 27th of September 2023.
Do you want to?
Emily, you wanted to say something?
Thank you. I didn't attend the last meeting, so I was sort of running a little bit behind on the 2 points that you made. So I think you had just because I think it'd be useful to reassure you before the end of the meeting. I think you talked about the external auditor picking up new guidance, and I think we weren't clear what that guidance was. Having reviewed the minutes, this was guidance that was issued by the audit sector as a late issue around infrastructure assets. Absolutely, the department then provided a statutory instrument, which meant it gave us an instruction as to how to account for it. That guidance absolutely has been followed, and that was included in a revised draft of the statements that we are waiting for the auditor to audit. So we have to confirm that we have implemented that guidance and are waiting for the audit. The other matter was your concern around an asset register and completeness of our assets. Now, this related to a matter in relation to 2 schools that we weren't accounting for. This wasn't a matter of the completeness of the asset register, but it was a matter of judgment. So those 2 schools were foundation schools or academy schools that are not within the control of the council. They related to PFI deals where the contract was with the council on the PFI deal, but the governing body of the school controls the school. So you'll know, because you're an accountant, control of an asset is what you usually use to account for the asset. So the asset register was not incomplete. It was that we had come to a different judgment on the level of control of this asset. The auditor has a different view. As a matter of judgment, I'm happy, therefore, to follow their judgment, because it isn't right or wrong, it's a judgment. And we have made that amendment in the 2021 accounts, the 21-22 accounts, and the 2023 accounts to enable me to sign it off. So the 2 issues around have we updated for their recent guidance? Yes. Am I satisfied as to the completeness of our asset register? Yes, that was a matter of judgment rather than the impact of our systems and the completeness of our asset register.
Right, okay. Just for the clarity, yes, thank you very much for explaining. But my concern was not on this particular topic. My concern was the external readers repeatedly has said in his report, he is recommending lots of recommendations which are not being acted upon from the 2-3 years. And those reports are not in front of me, but we can meet and discuss.
Happy to do so.
Yeah.
They absolutely are. I don't disagree. I am sure that we are giving it our full attention where we can, and that the delays aren't helping with that. But I very much expect that we are working to implement them.
Thank you very much, members. Thank you, officers. Thank you very much.